Good morning. Good morning, everyone. You are listening to the WCEG Network. We are the worldwide community empowerment group. We speak all life into the community. Log on to WCEGtalkradio.com. You can watch us live on your smart TV, Roku channel, YouTube, Facebook, LinkedIn. I am attorney Mel LaGrone, and I will be your host today for the next hour, talking all things immigration on Beyond the Border. Subscribe free to our YouTube channel, WCEG Network. Of course, you can like us on Facebook, Instagram, connect with us on LinkedIn, TikTok, and Threads, and download the free WCEG mobile app. Alexa, play WCEG Talk Radio and listen to WCEG on any of our 12 podcast distribution platforms. And last but not least, you all, a disclaimer. The topics and opinions are those of the show host and any of our guests, but not WCEG Network. So thank you for your continued support. Good morning, good morning, good morning. All right, you guys, let's get into it. So, first and foremost, as you know, we speak all things immigration, and there's a lot of things to speak about. So, of course, I can't cover them all today, but definitely we want to get an update, or I want to give you an update on what's going on in this crazy, crazy world of ours. Um, what that crazy person upstairs is doing, and how he's doing it, and just giving you ways to just kind of be safe, be cognizant, just understand what's going on, understand your rights right now, and things like that. Because I always say now is not the time to just, play, like the ostrich and stick your head in the sand, but also, too, now is also not the time for everyone to be so ingrained, like so like caught up in what's happening in this world, because then that's not obviously good for you. That's not good for your mental health. That's just not good for us. All right. So, you have to, of course, we have to be knowledgeable, right? We have to know what's going on in the world because this is the world that we live in. This currently is the America that we live in. But also to don't get so caught up in it to where, now it's affecting your livelihood and your health and your mental status, and things like that. Because ultimately, that's kind of feeding into what that crazy man is wanting, right? He's wanting all of us just to kind of just be down in the dumps. He's wanting all of us to just kind of like give up and surrender, not want to, fight these different, things in immigration that are going on, or he's just wanting us to just, back down and, be depressed and, just, live our lives in fear, and everything like that. So let's not give that to him, okay? Let's not do that. Let's be knowledgeable and understand what's going on, but let's not feed into the drama, the media, frenzy, and all of that type of stuff. So, all right, getting down to the facts, all right, and things that are happening. So I want to first start out with birthright citizenship. All right. So, as you all remember, with birthright citizenship, he is trying to, and I don't say his name because I don't even want to give him that. You get what I'm saying? I don't want to give him that energy. So, you all know who I'm talking about when I say he. All right. So, birthright citizenship. He wanted to end birthright citizenship, which means that if you were born in the United States to immigrant parents, meaning neither one of your parents are US citizens, all right? They both were born in another country, they're here in the United States, and they give birth to you. All right. Because you are in the United States and you are born in America, you are an American citizen. Your birth certificate says the USA. Your birth certificate says the state that you were born in. You are an American citizen. Well, what he was trying to do is say, No, we're not going to allow that to happen. All right. So if you are born on U.S. soil to immigrant parents who are not U.S. citizens, okay, not either one of them, then you're not a citizen. All right. But then if everybody kind of just kind of thinks about this, well, where are you a citizen of? Right? Because are you just countryless? Because hypothetically, your parents could be from two different countries and they're both here in the US and they give birth to you. So where would you be a citizen of if he takes away birthright citizenship, which doesn't even make any sense? So it went to, it went all the way up to the Court of Appeals. It started local, goes up to the Court of Appeals. I think it went up to the Supreme Court at one time. I think they brought it back down or something like that to the Court of Appeals. But right now, basically the Court of Appeals is like, nah, dude. Like this ain't gonna fly right now. All right. It's likely unconstitutional and they are continuously blocking for him to implement anything as it goes into birthright citizenship. Um, there was also some new news, I think, towards the end of just recently, towards the end of October, where it did go back to the Supreme Court because it goes up, down, up, down, basically. And so it went back to the Supreme Court on a different challenge. And they're trying to challenge it now based off of the 14th Amendment and his interpretation, which means, that man's interpretation of the 14th Amendment. And the 14th Amendment says, it's like one of the pivotal, obviously, right, parts of the U.S. Constitution. So that is the one that says, it's granting citizenship to all persons, right, born or naturalized in the United States, including formerly enslaved people. So, and it prohibits states from denying any person's life, liberty, or property without due process of law and denying anyone equal protection of the law. So, I'm not quite sure like what exactly the part of that he is now trying to challenge or trying to interpret as different than what it says. Because one of the key provisions include establishing birthright citizenship, guaranteeing equal protection under the law, and prohibiting former, Confederate officials from holding office. So I'm a little confused by that because I don't know what he is getting at because interpretation of laws is one thing, but our amendments in the Constitution are very like they're kind of very cut and dry. They mean what they mean. All right. And so it's back now up to the Supreme Court to make some sort of decision. But being honest, you all, I really and really transparent about this. I really don't see how this would move forward because of, like I said, the backlash on now trying to figure out who these babies belong to, right? What country do they belong to? Because now you're taking a child and you're putting them in a position to where, like I said, they would technically be countryless. Countryless. Is that even a thing? Is that even possible? So it will be interesting to find out what's happening with that. But as of right now, it is what it is. All right. Now, one thing that I do want everyone to understand when it comes to birthright citizenship, this is strictly what is if it is two immigrant parents, so two parents of a different country with a baby born in the US. All right. Now, if one of the parents is a US citizen, that child is also a US citizen. So that can't be taken away with this new law that he is trying to implement. All right. So that's birthright citizenship. Let's go into expedited removal. So a little bit of backstory on, immigration and the way that things happen if you're going to be deported. or removed from the United States. A lot of times, like if you cross over the border, all right, so obviously we know, Mexico, California, Mexico state, to the state of, California, cross over the border, things like that. Um, if you cross over the border and you're not claiming any sort of, asylum or, protection, from your country or anything like that, that you can, technically, be put into expedited removal, meaning, you would have to go right back. Okay, so, sending you right back. But there were cases where immigrants were issued humanitarian parole. So, if anyone remembers, humanitarian parole was where there was a specific parole program, and it was for Cubans, Venezuelans, Haitians, where a person here in the US could petition for that person, okay, in another country to parole them in, and it would be temporary. It was like a 2 year thing. Biden implemented this, it was a 2 year thing. And it allowed them to come to the United States for 2 years, be able to work, be able to stay safely in the US, and then they would have to go back after those 2 years. Well, when when he canceled this humanitarian parole, all right, just came in and said it's no longer, all right. So that means that any petitions that were still being processed are done null and void. And anyone who was here on that type of parole technically had to leave, all right, or, still has to leave. Well, instead of allowing these people to, let's say, maybe leave on their own, or, like figure out their status, like figure out what they're going to do, they might heck, I mean, it's been 2 years or almost 2 years, maybe if they're here, maybe they found love and maybe they got married or whatever. But he was trying to put them in expedited removal, like immediate, you got to go type of thing. And the courts really started, pushing back on that because they're here legally. And so just because you cancel a program doesn't mean that now you can just immediately deport them, back to this country that, you were bringing them over here from, because it was of humanitarian reasons, meaning there might have been something going on in the country, they had some sort of family or friends here, they could come here and be safe, that type of thing. So a lot of like, so the federal judges have now temporarily blocked that application as well on, the people who entered on parole and have that parole status, to where they cannot be expeditedly removed, which means that they would have to go through, if you're going to put them in a deportation or removal proceedings, they have to go through the process of due process, meaning go to court, be able to hire a lawyer, go in front of an immigration judge, and then see if there are any other options or anything like that for them. Um, I know a lot of people are wondering, because we are in, local elections right now and things like that. First and foremost, obviously, if you are a US citizen, you need to get out and vote, because this is how we got into this situation in the first place. Um, and the local elections are still very important, right? As it is to the presidential election, right? Because these are still people at our local levels that are making decisions for, the local states. And each state has their different issues, and I say challenges, when it comes to immigration and immigrant rights. So first and foremost, please, please, please get out and vote. Second of all, I would say that, sometimes people ask about, can ICE be at the voting polls and things like that. I would feel like no, because why would they want to be at the voting, or why would they be at the voting polls when the only people that can vote in the US are US citizens? So unless they plan on coming and picking up US citizens, off the street for whatever reason because they just want to be jerks, I don't think that that's a fear necessarily that we should have. And I definitely think that let's not have that fear, right? Because at the end of the day, if you are a US citizen, you are allowed to vote, and you should not have any fears of going to the voting polls and placing your ballots because of ICE being there. And hypothetically, if ICE is there, okay, who cares? Because you're a citizen, right? So, what are they going to do to you? Now, I say this to say this, or I say that to say this. If per se, because we do know, right, that there are a lot of immigrants in the country that are, U.S. citizen, because you can still be an immigrant. That means that, right, you're coming from a different country, you're here in the U.S., but now you're naturalized. So now you're a U.S. citizen, but maybe you don't speak, full English, or maybe you still speak Spanish in your household, or you still speak Spanish to your friends, or another language, right? It could be anything. Um, I would say, if you're going to the voting polls, obviously you're US citizens, right? But let's maybe even take some protection. Maybe let's take, I don't know, your naturalization certificate. Or hypothetically, you might have been born in the United States, right? But your parents, maybe speak Spanish, so you still speak Spanish to them, but you know English or whatever. Or you look a certain, you get what I'm saying? If by chance you have any of those type of fears, don't, you know, as I say, a double negative. Do not go to the voting polls, right? But maybe go to the voting polls with ammunition. Like, I have my birth certificate, okay? I have my naturalization certificate, right? Because at that point in time, no matter what they're trying, if they want to be there, no matter what they try to do to you, there's nothing that they can do to you if you are a US citizen or if you even naturalized. So I always say be prepared. But please, please, please do not let this be a fear in your hearts to where you don't want to go to the voting polls because of this. Because once again, now we're just feeding into the crazy man, right? And all of his tactics to, make this country, just I don't even know the words for it. I really don't even know. Make this country just not even a country anymore, I guess, right? So no, please do not let that, keep you from going to vote, because that is the only way that we're going to get out of this situation, is if we continue to vote. All right. So let's see, moving on to some of the other major policy shifts that USCIS has, and that's, um, the US, Citizen and Immigration Services. So these are the people that process your petitions. They process your applications for your green card, for your work permits, for, any type of visas that you're attempting to get, visitors visas, or if maybe it's, some special type of humanitarian visas, U visas, things like that. So currently, what they're doing, and this is one reason why I always tell people, please, do not DIY your immigration petition. And I say that because one, it's not all about just filling out a form and then sending in evidence. All right. You have to dot your I's and cross your T's. And now, specifically, they have put a policy in place to where if they don't want to, okay, if they decide they don't want to, they don't have to issue a request for evidence if you're missing something, or what's called a notice of intent to deny if they had looked through your file and they think that they want to deny it, but they want to give you like one more opportunity to kind of fix whatever it is that they're looking at, thinking that it's going to be denied. Okay. Before in the past, what they would do is they would offer these. So they would send this request for evidence, or they would send this notice of intent to deny to you. And it would give you an opportunity, and even lawyers have gotten them before, don't get me wrong, but it would give you an opportunity to fix whatever is wrong in your petition. Well, now they are saying that they don't have to send those, and they're not going to send them if they don't want to. They're going to just flat out deny your application. And on top of that, when they deny your application, they're also going to send you an NTA, which is a notice to appear, which is now going to put you into removal proceedings, deportation proceedings. So it's very important, very, very important at this point in time to go to an immigration attorney, go to a knowledgeable, reputable immigration attorney. And you all, whoever follows me on the show, whoever listens to this show and all that type of stuff, you all know that I say this all the time. You don't have to come to me, okay? But you got to come to somebody, all right? Some attorney that is very, very good, all right? So that they can do the petition for you, because we know what the government wants. And we go above and beyond to make sure that these petitions are stacked full of information. They are tight to give USCIS no reason to want to deny it or no reason to want to request evidence. So you need to reach out to an attorney if you are thinking about filing a petition with USCIS to make sure that it is done properly, to make sure that you don't receive an RFE or you don't receive a notice of intent to deny, or you don't just flat out receive a denial. That is very important, you guys. Very, very important, because this is it's a policy shift. And why is it a policy shift, right? Because he wants to make it harder on all immigrants. He wants to make it more difficult for you to try to get legal status. And this is one of the ways to do it. The next one is, and this one's kind of, it's a little scary. And sometimes I even hate to put it out there because it makes people not want to file their petition at all, even if they have a way to get legal status. But at the end of the day, what are you going to do? Like, are you just going to stay here with no status and be possibly put in deportation, or at least file your application? So here's the example. Right now, the law is if you come to the United States on a visa, so you come legally into the US, all right? Visitor's visa, whatever, H-1B visa, whatever, some sort of, work visa for a company. And those visas, though, are temporary. So you have a limited amount of time that you get to stay in the United States. So on tourist visas, for instance, you have 6 months. And before that 6 months is up, you're supposed to go back to your home country. But we all know, all right? I mean, things happen, whatever. Okay, you're living your life, you find love, all right? You end up getting married and you overstay your visa. So the law right now says that if you overstay your visa, you're just considered a visa overstay. And because you came legally into the United States, you can adjust your status here in the US if you're married to a US citizen. So you're married to a US citizen, you even go to an attorney because attorneys can't stop this right now. But you go to an attorney and they file your paperwork. They file everything. They file all of your documents, all the numbers that we say, your I-130, your 485, your 765, everything, okay? Because we're going to wait for an interview, all right? But you file all these documents and now, what USCIS is doing is they are contacting ICE and they're letting them know that they have a petition in front of them for a green card of somebody who now is a visa overstay. And what is ICE doing? They are now issuing notice of intents to appear to put this immigrant into removal proceedings. Like, you're doing everything right. The only thing that you did necessarily wrong is you overstayed your visa. And now you are looking to, fix it because you are able to get a green card and get legal status. But they're saying, no, you overstayed your visa. So now we're still going to issue a notice of intent to a notice to appear in immigration proceedings. So what does this mean? So this means if you get now mind you, let me go back though. Roughly 40% of all green cards each year are based off of this scenario. Visa overstay, marries a US citizen, files for their green card and to adjust their status in the United States. That is a huge number of green cards. And now they're going to be issuing these NTAs. So what does this mean? So if you get a notice to appear, obviously you definitely, need an immigration attorney. You need somebody that works in removal defense, all right? Because we can get you out, okay? But it's going to cost you, of course, unfortunately, a whole lot more money because now we're dealing with deportation proceedings versus just filing a petition at USCIS. And there's a strategy behind everything on and how it has to be done. So I don't want you to get so fearful that this is the end all be all in that type of situation, but just understand that it creates more challenges moving forward. And now there's more strategy to it. But once again, why? Because he wants to make it very difficult for immigrants in the United States to become legal, right? To have legal status. I mean, it does. It gets depressing. I know it does. But one thing that you have to remember is that knowledge is power. And so, it's always great to, seek out, advice of immigration attorneys. It's always great to, listen to people's, whatever, social media, but if something doesn't sound right, you can always call an immigration attorney. You can, ask for a consultation and then, really talk about your options and figure out what does this mean? Like, how does it make sense for me to move forward in this environment when this is what's going on? But the alternative is not to move forward, which definitely is not a good thing because if you get put into removal proceedings and you haven't started your paperwork and you haven't, started processing your green card and you're able to, now it makes it more difficult for you to get out of removal proceedings. So just keep that in mind. Okay, before we wrap up, there are some things that I want you to know about that are obviously some new trends in immigration when it comes to criminal things and different types of crimes. And as you all know, I am a immigration and criminal defense attorney, and I do the crossover of crimmigration, which means I know what type of crimes will affect immigration statuses, and I always have to be cognizant of that when I have a non-US citizen client as in the criminal aspect of things. So right now, the government is making green card holders. So when you have a green card, remember everyone thinks that they're safe, but you're not safe anymore. You're just not. So if you have a green card, which means that you have legal status in the United States, you probably have your 10-year green card and you've been renewing it every year. If you get a DUI, okay, one single DUI can render you inadmissible to come back into the United States. So hypothetically, if you decide that you want to travel out of the country, because as a green card holder, you can travel, and you travel out of the United States and you have a DUI conviction on your record, you might get all kinds of issues with CBP. They might put you in secondary. Heck, they might even tell you you're inadmissible to come back into the United States, and now you're going to have to deal with that. So understand that before you travel, and y'all know I love to travel, and I talk about travel all the time. And I always specifically make it to if you're a non-citizen or if you're a green card holder, you are traveling at your own risk right now. But if you are planning on traveling out of the country and this is your situation, you have any sort of a criminal record, you need to consult with an immigration attorney prior to doing that. You need to really consult with a immigration attorney prior to doing that to make sure that you will not be stuck, okay, out of the country somewhere. Also, too, if you are attempting to file for your naturalization and you want to become a citizen, if you have a DUI within that 5 year statutory period that they look at for good moral character, they say that you can't prove good moral character. So that DUI is going to affect your citizenship application. So at the end of the day, you shouldn't even be applying. So if you have a DUI on your record, you want to become a citizen, you need to reach out to an immigration attorney first. So, one, so that they can do the application for you, but also two, so that they can look at your record and they can tell you whether or not it's a good time or a bad time to apply for citizenship. Also, too, if you have DUIs and you're applying for your adjustment of status, meaning that you do not have green card yet, but let's say you're in the process because you're married to that US citizen spouse, it may become a problem. So it may be a challenge. You definitely want an immigration attorney to file your application for you, look out at your application, go over your criminal history for your options. Uh, Let's talk about the little things such as speeding tickets, y'all. Now, for your citizenship applications, it requires that you disclose all of your tickets, all of your speeding tickets, all of your whatever, failure to follow too closely, whatever tickets that you get, right? You are required to disclose them. Now, we always tell our clients, anyways, we've always told them to disclose, like tell us what your tickets are. And most of the time, what we will do is we will actually request. In Georgia, you can request what's called a GCIC. So that's their criminal history, so that we have any and everything that has gone on with them. Okay. Because now speeding tickets are causing a challenge. So you have to disclose all your tickets. If you have three or more speeding tickets, there might be a pattern that they look at as that you are a danger to the community, and that if you are a danger to the community, you cannot prove good moral character, and you might not be able to get your citizenship. If you are traveling with any sort of unpaid tickets, or if you have a warrant or anything like that, you are traveling at your own risk, because once again, you may be inadmissible and not be able to come back. Let's talk about paying taxes. So this one is huge, and everybody knows that, if you pay, we all owe taxes. Like, we all have to pay taxes, right? You have to file every year. You possibly might owe, but maybe you don't have the money, right, to just, cut that check and pay, a lump sum amount. So, because you're going to do the good thing, right? You're going to go to the IRS and you're going to ask for a payment plan. You're going to put yourself on a payment plan. You're going to pay monthly, and you're showing them, hey, I've got the intent on paying these off. Well, if you are planning on becoming a citizen, now they are not accepting payment plans. If you have your taxes. So usually it is, our clients will come in, they say, hey, I owe back taxes. I've been on a payment plan for 2 years. Here are all of my payments that I've made to the IRS. And we usually say, okay, great, no problem. We can still file for your citizenship, because we can still prove good moral character because you're on a payment plan and you are paying every month like you're supposed to. Well, now they're saying, no, you can't prove basically good moral character if you owe back taxes, even if you're on a payment plan. So what I am actually telling our clients is, if this is the case, right, you can still file for your citizenship because they're not going to deny it, at that level. But when we get your interview date, you need to pay those taxes off. right? So either one lump sum, pay them off, or maybe even if you can take a loan out and pay those taxes off before you go to your interview, because then you can show I've paid these off. Because it doesn't matter when you pay them off, just as long as you're still not on a payment plan. Of course, you don't want to ignore, paying taxes. You don't want to be, late on your taxes, anything like that. So taxes right now are a huge red flag for USCIS. Um, a couple other things. So, if you're a green card holder, obviously you cannot leave the country and be gone for more than 6 months. That is the end all be all. Otherwise, it will look like you have abandoned your green card. But now also too, the government is really looking at people like if you are gone, let's say for 1 year, but you maybe even had a reentry permit, you filed that prior to leaving or things like that. They are still questioning you really, really hard at the airport, um, and pressuring you. So they're pressuring people to give up their green card status, fill out this form, and basically it's going to give up your green card status, and then you're going to have to stay wherever in the country that you're in, that type of thing. So don't do that. Don't ever fill out any documentation ever if they ever ask you or they tell you or they try to intimidate you into doing that. Do not do that. You can say right then and there, like, hey, I got to call a lawyer, and you need to be calling a lawyer. And then one last thing. So for green card holders that, once again, you're traveling, okay, things get, what do you want to call it? They get dinged, right? When you're at the airport ready to come back in. Okay, that's when you have to be knowledgeable of all this stuff. So do not have anything where because they can monitor your social media. So don't have anything in your social media against the government. Anything, maybe on, your text messages on your phone, your emails, anything like that. Because as you enter back into the United States, they can check. They can check your social media. They can check your cell phones. They can check all of these different, applications, and they will monitor and they will see, are you speaking out against, America? Are you speaking out against the government? you know yeah, we have free speech, but not really, not right now. So you have to be cognizant of all of that. So I know it was a lot, y'all, but I just kind of wanted to give you some updates on the more important things right now that are going on in the US, and, just kind of let you know where we stand right now. And, as I always say, it's more or less like just be prepared, be knowledgeable. If you have to carry your birth certificate around, carry your birth certificate around. We already know that they're doing major ICE raids all over the US. They are picking people up in restaurants just because they are speaking a different language, all of that type of stuff. So just be cognizant of that. And if you are a US citizen, you need to just carry your naturalization papers in your phone, or a copy, in your car or things like that, or your birth certificate. If, let's say, you don't look like if you don't look like you were born here, or, you speak another language and stuff like that, just to make sure that you don't have to be, um, I want to say, bothered or inconvenienced by being picked up. They take you to, the offices, they run a background, they do all of this type of stuff and things like that. And then you're gone for 3, 4, 5 hours. Your family might not know where you are. And then they eventually let you go because they realize that you're a citizen and they can't keep you. But so that you don't have to get to that point, just kind of be prepared and have those documents with you. So I am Attorney Mel LaGrone with LaGrone Law. I am an immigration and crimmigration attorney in Atlanta, Georgia. We have our offices in downtown Lawrenceville. We also have an office on St. Thomas, the U.S. Virgin Islands. It is always a pleasure to be here once a month to give you all the updates on all things immigration here at Beyond the Border. And just reach out, please reach out to me. You can WhatsApp us, you can send us a DM, in social media, or, if you need to reach out to another immigration attorney, I don't care, but reach out to somebody if you have questions. And before you do anything in criminal court, like take a plea or anything like that, do not call us after things are done because we can't fix it. So be proactive, understand your situation, and reach out to me or an immigration attorney to help you. Our telephone number in Georgia is 678-250-5449. Our website is www.lagronelaw.com. If you want to reach us on the islands, it's 340-626-0778. And once again, I want to thank you all so much for being here. Welcome back to the new season, and I will see you all next month. Again, our telephone number, just so that you have it, is 678-250-5449 or 340-626-0778. Thanks.